What's up, dudes and dudettes? Welcome back to Just a Dude podcast, the podcast that shares the extraordinary stories of normal everyday people. You're in for a wild ride today with Tim Thomas, a guy who's stared down sharks, war zones, and veteran suicide stats, all while cracking the code on sleep and generosity. Tim's raised over $1 million for charity, saved 40 lives in a year, and he's here to drop truth bombs that'll change how you see rest, resilience, and life itself. So buckle up. You're not going to want to miss this episode of Just a Dude podcast. Let's roll. Tim, welcome to the show. Give us a quick scoop about who you are and what's driving your insane mission.
My name's Tim Thomas. I served for 6 years in the Australian Special Forces. And what I'm super passionate about is having people return to their, what I call physical sovereignty. We've all got bodies and they do a whole lot more than just carry our eyeballs around, you know? So I like to show people just how amazing their body is and all the resources they have inside of them. You know, my sort of favorite universal lever is breathwork. That is such a easy, effortless, free way to access your body's own resources. And I'm on a mission because it wasn't until I had a chronic injury when I had PTSD. When I told a doctor, I lost 6 years of my life to pills when I said I couldn't sleep, right?
Right.
And I can't get that time back, but I believe I was given that time so I could have skin in the game, to have a heart for people, to give them options, you know. Now, I'm not against pills per se, but what no one tells you is, you know, because sometimes pills are the lesser of two evils, right? But what nobody tells you, what nobody told me, was there's a benefit to taking pills, but there's also a massive cost. You don't get anything for free. And they especially don't tell you how hard it is to get off these things. So if I can give people real-time options for them to access their own sovereign power, then, you know, they're going to be able to serve at their highest level as well.
Yeah, and that's great to know, because someone like myself, and this is one of the reasons that, you know, when we got hooked up on Podmatch, Tim, was I was very interested because I have had problems with sleep my entire life, pretty much my entire adult life. I think a lot of that has to do with PTSD. I think we talked before about me being in law enforcement, but, you know, I have had to resort to pills, but I'm getting to the point in my life where I don't want to rely on pharmaceuticals anymore. You know, I want to do something as natural as possible, because you're absolutely right. Like you said, yes, there's a benefit to the pills, but those side effects and those other things that come with it are so much worse.
I can't tell you the fear I had in me when I realized that I'd lost a lot of memories. I didn't remember a lot of times when I was on the pills, but then even before that, it's like it washed out a bunch of memories. I was at a friend's place recently and I'm like, this place looks familiar. And he looked at me like I was stupid and he says, Tim, you helped me move in here. And then I'm like, crap, is like, I hope I was a good person, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because there are some of those. Luckily, I'm not on anything as strong as I forget what one of the ones that I took years ago, but like I would sleepwalk and do things that, you know, I never knew. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm done with that. But yeah, some of those are so strong that you're absolutely right. Like you said, you get that morning hangover or that sleep hangover and you're helping somebody move and you don't even remember it.
Well, I think I'm trying to say this in one breath because I'm very passionate about this. It wasn't until I had a chronic injury and I was in a very vulnerable position that I discovered that the world we're in right now isn't an age of information. It's an age of marketing.
Oh, yeah.
The first 6 pages of Google are marketers. And a goal of a marketer is to have a repeat sale. Because if you are truly healed, if you are connected to something powerful, you don't need repeat sales, right? And so when you're vulnerable, the marketers know how to say exactly what you want to hear.
Yep.
You know, yes, this one pill is Superman. It'll swoop in, solve all your problems, and all you have to do is take a pill. Okay? And that's very appealing, especially when you're really hurting.
Yeah, it is.
So I have such a heart for people that are on their healing journey, because there's something that needs to happen before anything. And that's kind of realizing that there's 2 things that need to happen before someone actually starts their healing journey. And one of which is realizing that pain, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, physical or emotional, it'll get to a certain duration or intensity, Nathan, where it transforms from pain, okay, to loneliness, isolation. I'm the only person going through this. And that's the most destructive part of it, okay? because
absolutely.
that feeling of disconnect, because we're social mammals, Nathan, if you knew I had your back 100 frickin' percent and I knew you had my back 100 frickin' percent, like everything else is a very small detail. Very small detail. We can handle pain. What we can't handle is feeling like we're alone, disconnected, isolated. Because if it's just me, I'm the one that I get hyper vigilant because I'm the only one watching my back. I can't relax because I got my tribe around me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And so, people in that state, if they make the effort to get healing and they get that sort of, what ends up happening is they'll try it. They're not really, they get promised something. They're not connected into the power. And then they end up blaming themselves. And they go, well, I tried getting help didn't help. So I'm never doing that again.
Yeah. Yep. You're absolutely right. But Tim, how did you go from being in the Australian Special Forces to now being, an advocate for better sleep and resilience and, the things that you're doing now? How did that journey happen? Was there like a key point in your life where you were just like, you know what, I've got to change something, or was it something else?
A lot of, veterans are like any other person, right? Their symptoms are somewhat more acute. Okay. And what veterans are really black belts in is messing themselves up. Okay.
Absolutely,
and
right?
too, I messed myself up pretty hard on pills and alcohol and what that gave me is when I started coming out of that, Nathan, I started seeing how many other people were in that same situation, and they were always there. But my own experience gave me an awareness of those people that are hurting. Otherwise, they just wouldn't even be on my radar. So I feel like I was given that obstacle to get through so I could then, help others to get through it. But I started working in a veteran charity and I had no training other than skin in the game, but I'm dyslexic. So I see things in patterns, and the pattern I just kept seeing was what no one else saw. I just described. It's not the pain, okay? It's the isolation, the loneliness that the pain causes. We can handle heaps of pain if we got our tribe around us watching our back, right?
Yep.
We're built for it. But if you don't address the isolation and the fatigue that comes from the isolation, like if I can't drop my guard for a second because if I did something bad's going to happen, it's going to be my fault. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm not sleeping. So isolation and fatigue. And this is where if you don't address those two things, there's millions of dollars poured into the veteran recovery space, mental health in general. Yeah. But if you don't address the isolation, if you don't address the fatigue, it's kind of like water off a duck's back. And so I just created these programs that the success of the program was measured on how much the quality of sleep improved in the individual. And we noticed that if we could improve the quality of sleep, it's like this magic happened in all these other areas of life, just like magic, relationships together, just like magic, I'm more productive at work, just like magic, stuff, okay? Because physiologically speaking, where we take on energy, like we eat food and we crap, right? Mm-hmm. Our brain sits in this bag that if we're not sleeping properly, it's like crapping in its own space. It creates energy, but it also creates waste. And when you sleep properly, your spinal fluid comes up and rinses out the crap from your brain so you can think and function optimally.
Kind of give you a clearer brain.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you... Like in the Special Forces, we used to deliberately target our enemy's sleep. We knew we didn't know about the science of sleep, but we knew if we could take it out for 3 nights, it would mess them up better than a bullet, Yep. And then I come back to my home country and I see it sort of just granted, or everyone's sort of sleeping terribly. And people are functioning and they tell themselves that they're functioning, but it's until you get a genuine, awesome, nourishing, deeply refreshing good night's sleep, you don't realize kind of what you're missing out on, because these things happen by increments all the time. And everybody's, in fact, there's a whole economy based on you being fatigued, coffee, energy drinks, uppers, downers, all these sorts of things. So, I joined the military because I believe that, for a country to be sovereign, you've got to protect your boundaries. Yep. Okay. And on a personal level, if you feel like your boundaries are getting pushed on, it's pretty hard to remain sovereign if you've got a porous boundary around you. And we don't know it, but if we don't access our own internal power, then there's so many people, so many things outside of our body that'll take advantage of that, you know?
Yeah.
There's no holding ground, because if I know me, if I have a bad night's sleep, you know, I eat more the next day. I'm more cranky. I'm more angry. At the end of the day, I'm more imbalanced. So the likelihood of me having more alcohol is greatly increased.
Right.
And so, you know, you make bad decisions. It sort of feeds the bad decision downward spiral,
And
but
it just keeps
start
compounding
making,
on itself, right? And it
yeah,
just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And, you know, I wanted to just say the same thing too. Like, you're focusing on sleep, but I've learned a lot, you know, as well in my lifetime, to know that sleep has so much function with, you know, if you want to lose weight, you got to get good sleep. If you want to have a healthy heart, you've got to have good sleep. You know, if you want to have just general good health overall, good sleep is the number one ingredient in that recipe.
well, where the world we currently live in is very visual. You know, you've got to be able to see it. The gyms are full of mirrors, and if you don't see it, it almost doesn't exist, right? So sleep is one of those unseen things in our life. The term I use is sleep is the soil from which everything grows. And imagine if someone was trying to, you know, look at a tree and go, okay, let's get the trunk. What we can see is we want to get the trunk healthy, you know, or we want the fruit in our lives that we want to have. And they start getting things from the outside to plug and play so the tree can function. But someone who really understands growth goes into the unseen, goes into the soil. And then just like magic, we get the trunk we want. We get the fruits in our life we want. But again, you don't hear about this sort of stuff because no one's making money from it, you know.
Exactly.
If you would be physically sovereign, there's a whole lot of things that would be redundant in this world, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, that kind of leads to the next segment that I wanted to talk to, because we've been talking about sleep. And I know you've talked about, you know, a good way to completely relax your body with 3 breaths. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to kind of go into this, you know, can you hit us with, you know, how would I chill out with just those 3 breaths flat, you know, because for most of us, especially, I'm sure, you know, and myself, you know, we do multiple things throughout the day, whether it be a job, a podcast, whatever, but, you know, we get stressed out. So I'm very curious about this 3 breath method that you have.
Sure. No, I'd love to drop it on you. And breath work isn't hard per se, but because you've been doing it your whole life, you've got a certain habit of doing it. You know, it's like imagine if you were limping, but everyone on the world was limping, and so it was normal. So for you to do anything different, it can be quite challenging. So before I show you the 3 breaths, I need your permission. Okay, because we're going to do something new right now. And when anything new comes into our system, the old can resist it. So to have you get the most from this 3 breath experience, and if listeners and yourself get nothing from this podcast, if you can remember this 3 things, I've packaged this. So if you've got this for the rest of your life, you'll be able to get yourself back into a place of peace and power, and anyone you show this to.
Awesome.
But these are the 3 questions that they're easy questions, but it's just an invitation for you to invite this, and this just allows your brain to take on something new and experience something new. Okay, so the first question, Nathan, is this: do you give your physical body full permission to be fully nourished by your breath?
Yes.
Great. Okay, Nathan, do you give, and this is obviously for the listeners as well, do you give your breath full permission to 100% nourish your mind?
Yes.
Great. Do you give your breath 100% permission to nourish and make feel amazing your unconscious mind?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So this starts really simple. All we're going to do is breathe in and out. Okay. Now, if you've done that, congratulations. You're on your first step because you took a conscious breath. You were aware of that breathing. Okay. And for me, mental health isn't so much a mental problem. It's a physical disconnect problem. So if I'm so focused out there, there'll come a point where I'm starting to go, you know what I mean? So see how my breath mirrors my state. But this is like, once we tap into your breath, you'll be able to control your state. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is breathe in, but then breathe in again and again and again and again.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah,
So
let's do it.
what we're going to do is we're going to blow it out and shake it out. Blow it out, blow it out, shake it out. Shake your shoulders, shake your hands, shake your head, out, and then breathe in. And then breathe in more, and just let it out.
Wow.
All right.
I like that. That was only one breath. I like that, Tim.
Oh, yeah. This is how powerful this is. Okay. And once people get their eyes open to the power of this stuff, a lot of stuff becomes redundant that you are dependent on. Trust me, as someone who was dare I say, addicted to a lot of different substances. So you probably noticed when you breathe in again and again, you had a bit more space opening up in your top third of your lungs. Fantastic. So we're going to call this area here your secondary inhale. Your primary is where you normally breathe in and out. Your secondary is up here. Now, what I love about my job, Nathan, is showing people how amazing their body is. And what possibly nobody knows is in your 2 fingers and thumbs, you have a little power button. Okay? And we're going to pinch that power button really hard when we get to our secondary inhale. Okay, so we're going to blow it out. We're going to breathe in. And when it comes to our secondary inhale, we're going to pinch as hard as we can, our thumb into our 2 fingers, and just notice the impact on that secondary inhale. Okay, so we're going to take a normal breath, but we're going to pinch our fingers at the halfway point.
Gotcha.
All right. So let's blow it out and shake it out. Blow it out, shake it out. Shake your arm, shake your head. Out. Start breathing in. Hit your power buttons. Hit them hard. Hold it. Just wriggle your shoulders. And if it feels good, let it out with a sigh.
Oh, that is nice. It's funny because, it seems as you're listening to it, it seems weird. It's something you haven't done before. But when you actually do it, you feel like a sense of relief.
Yeah. We're actually going to a place. If you were to spend an hour with me, I could take you to a place that words could not describe. Because the reason why breathwork is so powerful, Nathan, is that the wiring of our breath outdates the wiring of our mind. Okay, so if you think of us as evolved human beings, before we were sentient and putting paintings on rock walls, we were breathing. Before we were speaking, we were breathing. So this deep ancient wiring can take us to a place beyond breath, beyond thoughts, and it has the power to outrank your thinking mind. So intrusive thoughts, crap that's in your head that you don't want there, okay, this has the power to kick it out. But keep in mind, your mind has been here for a while. It's kind of the new kid on the block. And that's why I asked permission to access your lungs, because your mind will go, no, this is new. We want to be in control here.
Yeah.
Okay. But this old wiring goes, hang on, little fella, you're part of a team right now. Let yourself integrate. So there is a bit of, letting go of that which you thought was once who you were to tap into your breath.
Yeah, nice.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna juice this up even more. We're gonna make it feel even better. So you did really well there where you breathed in and hit your power buttons, okay? And so what we're going to do this time when we blow it out and shake it out, we're going to keep our mouth closed and we're going to snort through our nose. So if you look at my nose, behind my nose, you and I both have sinuses, okay? And when I was a professional fighter in a former life, my coach would always say, before you do a combination, do a big snort through the nose, because according to him, that sucked air over the sinuses straight into your brain. So it was an uptake of oxygen. Now, whether that was scientifically true or not, I don't know, but it worked in combat, and it will have a special effect of breathing, trying to suck that air through your nose. And we're going to point our nose to the ceiling. So when we breathe in, I'll give you a demonstration. We'll blow it out, blow it out, blow it out, blow it out. Breathe in at the halfway point. We're going to hit these things and we're going to snort as fast as we can and open everything up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. All right. So let's blow it out, shake it out. Blow it out, shake it out. Out. Out, further. Mouth closed, breathe in, and then rapidly snort. Look to the ceiling, lean back. Now, wriggle your shoulders. Wriggle, and if it feels good, let it out with a sigh.
Wow.
Just wait a second. Just let that energy integrate. Okay, energy's got an intelligence all of its own, Nathan. it will go to where it wants to go. And, you and I, we're both articulate people. We both like articulating experiences, but sometimes our desire to classify something can impede the energy flowing to where it's supposed to go. So if you let that go, some people go, oh, I never knew I was tense in my shoulders. I never knew I was tense in the back of my head. Oh, I kind of feel like rubbing my face right now, or even yawning. So as much as, like I said, you and I, we communicate,
right?
But give yourself that time for it to integrate. Now that it's done that, where are you feeling it in your body?
For me, I feel like lighter in my head and just like my upper chest altogether. It just feels like a weight was lifted almost.
Yeah. We store a lot of our tension here. Okay. And so when we create space, that leaves us and we're left with what we are, which is energetic beings. Now, I believe energy comes through us and we're energetic to the level we are blocked. Okay. So as we age, we tend to accumulate these blockages.
That's for sure.
Well, okay. And so what a healer will do is, in far less time than you think, remove those blockages so you can return to your energetic state very rapidly. And this is where, the truth shall set you free, as they say, when you really experience the truth of it. And that is, we are naturally energetic, but we're energetic to our blockages. And as we age, we can accumulate blockages from ourselves, from others, from the dumb shit we do. There's no shortage. So this is where, like, a daily practice of breath work isn't just breath. It's removing blockages so you can be the energetic, sovereign individual, that you're born to be. And one of the other reasons why this is so powerful, Nathan, is us humans, like I said, naturally energetic, but think of us like we're electrical circuits, right? Mm-hmm. And our brain is the electrical generator. And from our brain comes all these nerves, okay, that flow energy to our body. Now, these nerves, they're a bit like hose pipes. So when you pinch, your garden hose, there's not much water coming out. Right. Okay. So when proper breath gives us proper structure, and proper structure allows that natural energy to flow. So watch what happens to my structure. Shit, my dog died. Oh, crap, I had an argument with my good friend. See how I sort of hunch over? So that is literally blocking my own energy. So when I'm straight and upright, all of a sudden, I don't just get more energy from the breath. I'm layering that with more energy through my natural energetic system being aligned. Do you see how that works?
Yeah, and I was going to say too, Tim, when we did that last breath, I almost felt like the energy moving from my head down through my body as we released that, and it's kind of amazing. And I got to be honest with you, I'm going to be trying that quite a few times throughout the next few days to keep going. I love that.
It is
feeling.
With a big smile on my face to tell you that we haven't even started this. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
And this is why this is so good, right? And this is why this secondary inhale, I call that the breath of possibility. Okay, so if something feels impossible in my head or something that's, bringing me down, if I'm getting frustrated, I'm a human. I get annoyed in the real world like anyone else, right? Yeah. But I have these little medication buttons, okay? Here. So I've got crap in my head. I need to pinch my fingers, and that reminds me, I discreetly in public go, hold it, wriggle it, and then I'll let that energy go to where I'm blocked. And it'll go, oh, thank you. It's like a warm hug on the inside. Okay. So this becomes, I use this as a metaphor, but when you're in hospital and you've got the button for the morphine or the call button, these little power buttons, these are your now medicine pumps. Okay, because pinching your hands together is an interruption to your normal thoughts. Because when they call it ruminating. When you focus on a negative thought, it's only taken up 2%, but when you focus on it, it becomes 4%, 8%, 16%, and it takes over everything. If you can catch that rumination with a deep breath, okay, and hold it and wriggle it, okay, that will interrupt that rumination process and you start establishing a whole new level of normal. So I used to freak out in shopping centers, okay? So, and I used to have to medicate, but now what I'll do is I will get myself doing some breath work in the morning. So I establish where I want to feel. This is where I want to feel, right here. And then when my nervous system strays from that point, I'm like, okay, I just have to bring myself back in. How do I do that? Okay. But in the past, when my nervous system strayed from where I want it to be, I didn't really acknowledge it, and I just, tough it out. And there is a time and a place to tough it out.
Sure.
But then at the end of the day, I didn't know why, but I had to drink like half a dozen beers because there was an imbalance, right? And so if we can through the day access this medicine and just play with it for a day, just see what life is like with the breath of possibility. Something feels impossible, let's make it impossible. Let's make it possible,
Yeah, I love that. Tim, I was just going to say that I love that because it gives you an alternative to, like you said, if you notice something going on, take that breath, be in the moment, get your have that deep breath, hit your buttons, right? Hit your buttons and just try to let that go a little bit or try to focus to get that out and just recenter yourself really is what we're trying to do here, right?
Amen. When you come back to your own power, you'll discover you're more powerful than you know. It's only when we focus outside of ourselves on something that, is not here, then we lose our sovereignty, and this is why a breathwork practice first thing in the morning, because if I go into my day and I don't have that as muscle memory, when something starts stressing me, I automatically go into retaliate, F that guy, I'm going to get him back, as opposed to, okay, when something comes in, I'm going to breathe and flow with it. And then I'm like, yeah, that was, you start discovering your own power through something like just simple breathing. And again, you don't hear about this sort of stuff because no one's making money from it. There's an economy based on you not knowing this.
Exactly. They want you to buy that medication. They want you to get addicted to the, the pills and all these over the counter things that really, they might give you some minor relief, but in the long term, like we talked before, it's probably going to give you more problems than it's worth.
And they don't. And there's people like I did, lost 6 years of my life before I discovered that. And I can genuinely speak to the impact of breath work because I've had it work in the absolute worst case scenarios. And what I'm going to show you now, we're going to go from the breath of possibility to the breath of peace. Now, this one you do need to be doing seated, laying down, not driving, not operating heavy machinery, because this can really have you drift. And it starts with the breath of possibility, where we just sort of snort it and look open, but we hold our breath and we wriggle it from our top third to the middle down below. So you see how I'm sort of hunched over. I've stuck my belly out and my hands are on my belly. Okay. And my head's down low, and we're going to squeeze that, pressurize it, because down in our bottom third of our lungs, that's where we have the best gas exchange, because the little air sacs, the alveoli in our lungs, they've got the most blood wrapped around them in our bottom third. So when I'm working with professional athletes, I'll show them how to suck it down there and then exchange a higher level of, have a better diffusion gradient of the gases, because oxygen dissolves lactic acid. Okay, so in between sets, if you can be the one dissolving the lactic acid with proper breathing, then you'll be able to perform better on your next set or whatever it is you're doing. So, but what we're going to do now is we're going to use it in a way to flood our system with oxygen, and we're going to experience what we call the nature of air. Okay? Air has a certain nature. If you try to hold the air, you can't grab it. Air can't be held. And that's kind of obvious, but when we breathe it into our system, we take on that nature. Air doesn't allow us to hold on to any physical tension. It doesn't allow us to hold on to any mental tension. Okay? This is a chemical override. This isn't meditation. Meditations are thoughts controlling thoughts. And if you've got a train wreck going on up there and someone says, oh, just meditate, I'm like, you freaking kidding me? Exactly. But this breath, it outranks your overthinking mind in a very quick way. So right now, we're going to just do what we did before, and we're going to slowly walk and talk just so we can get this one right. I'll demonstrate it first. Yeah. So with your power buttons ready, we're going to blow it out. And then breathe in, hit those power buttons, open, open, open. We're going to hold our breath. We're going to wriggle it to our middle, wriggle it down low, head forward. We're going to squeeze that. And then we're going to let it out we're going to call like a cat face, like a cat hissing. So we're going to try and squeeze it out, but our mouth stops it. A bit like, when there's a pressure cooker on your stove and you let a bit of gas out. That's what it's like. There's going to be pressure in your stomach, and you're going to be letting it out super slow. The longer you can make that hissing noise, the better.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right. Let's try
So we're
this.
going to do one of those. We're going to feel into it. Then we're going to just do 3 and we'll go from there. So
All right.
blowing it out, shake it out, blow it out, shake it out. Shake your hands, shake your head, out, 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 out. Feel your power buttons, feel your power buttons. Start breathing in. Really snort that air. Open, open, open. Snort that open. Feel like your chest is opening. Wriggle your shoulders and feel how wonderful it is to have an open chest. Now hold your breath. Let your head fall forward, hands on your belly, hands on your belly. Push it down long as possible. Now, just keep your eyes closed for a second and relax back into the chair. I want to congratulate you. That was your first full breath, possibly the first one you've taken. And, welcome home. This is where we live.
Well,
How you tracking?
Yeah, I have to encourage anyone that's listening, if you watched that and didn't try it yourself, go back and try it, because that was amazing. It just felt like a big release and then just like a rush of energy, once everything hit. It was, Tim, that's amazing. I'm going to keep doing that one for sure.
Well, we're going to do this 3 times.
Okay.
So this is where, and there's no bottom to this. The deeper you go, the deeper you go. This is going back to something very ancient inside of us, and give yourself permission, because we've been thinking that we are a certain way defined by our thoughts, but our thoughts are part of a very ancient team, and we're bringing alignment back into that. And that's when you start tapping into the energy that's always been there, and you realize your own thoughts have just sort of been the cork on the bottle,
Right.
So it's time to let the genie out.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to do this 3 times. I'll walk and talk you through it. I'll do it with you.
All right.
And then we'll check in at the end. So blow it out, shake it out. Blow it out, shake it out. Just rub your thumb into your 2 fingers, get them ready, and then breathe in, hit those power buttons, really open that chest. Feel like your chest is more open than it's ever been, like it's a flower opening up and the warm sun is on it. Feels really good. Wriggle your shoulders, let your head fall forward, hands on your belly, put that air down low, push it down low, low, low. Pressurize that and let it out super slow, and let your shoulders relax. Feel like your body's like this big inflatable toy that's just deflating and all the tension's leaving it, leaving your shoulders, your spine, your head, your back, your arms. And then when you're ready, blow it out again, blow it out, shake it out, blow it out, shake it out. Feel your power buttons. And then like you're doing a big lifts, double your snort, in, really look to the ceiling, lean back like you're sort of doing limbo, wriggle those shoulders, feel how wonderful it is to open up that chest, how wonderful it is to have a big, proud chest that's open. Now holding your breath, letting your chest relax forward, everything relax now, push it down low, pressurize it and let it out super slow. And as the air leaves, so does your tension. So does anything that causes tension. It's like your body and mind are deflating, like a deflating toy. There's no longer any tension. You feel it just leaving your body quite naturally with your breath, letting that energy integrate. We're going to blow it out one more time. And this one's going to feel extra awesome, extra relaxing, extra peaceful and powerful. Blow it out, shake it out. Blow it out, shake it out. Blow it out, shake it out. Blow it out more than you've blown it out before. Out, 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 out. Feel your power buttons. Really a strong snort. Hit those power buttons open. Open more and lengthen more. Lengthen the whole body to receive this wonderful gift of your own breath. Wriggle your shoulders. Feel like you're stretching in the bed. Let your head collapse forward. Let everything relax. Hands on your belly. Push it down low. Push it lower than it's been. Pressurize that and let it out super slow. And as your breath leaves you, treat your body like a deflating toy. All the tension is deflating from your neck, your shoulders, your back, your legs. It's just leaving your body as your breath leaves your body. And I just invite you, Nathan, to keep your eyes closed and lean back into the chair and let that chair support you. Let those muscles that are touching the chair feel supported by that chair. That chair was built to hold you. it will hold you. So often in our tension, we don't allow ourselves to be fully supported, fully held. It's like our own tension is our own backwards way of trying to make ourselves feel supported, but it doesn't work like that. It's only when we let go of all that tension that we can let ourselves feel supported, feel held, and our body can go into that rested and connected state.
Yeah. That's amazing, Tim. And that's the 3 breaths, right?
And 3 breaths in less than a couple of minutes, you know?
Yeah. And I feel amazing. I do. I feel like, a lot of stress has left the body just in that, those 3 short breaths. That's pretty darn amazing.
Yeah. So
I feel good now, Tim. Now I feel like I forgot what the rest of the interview was going to be about.
And that's a really good sign. Okay. So do you remember how I said there's a lot of science behind this, but the way I say it is we take on the nature of air. Air can't be held. And we don't know that sometimes our thoughts block our energy systems. Sometimes our thoughts have us so connected to what's out there, we disconnect from our own body. So mental health to me isn't so much a mental problem. It's a physical disconnect problem. The distance our thoughts are away from our bodies is the measure of how unhealthy we are mentally.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious in veterans when you're in fight or flight, we're so connected to a potential external threat that we've disconnected from our own bodies. And we can go through all sorts of physical, unworkability, injuries, stuck trauma, but we're so focused out there that this doesn't register, and we're almost scared to look down and check in, and because I've been blocking this stuff up for ages, like stamping on the instead of emptying the garbage, we're just stomping on the top,
Yep.
So the biggest shift I've had in my life has been, morning and evening breath work to clear out the rubbish bin, have me engage with the day from an I'm learning what it is to be open, and then go into your unconscious with peace, power, connectivity, and we can give this gift to ourselves. And I guess, that is that knowledge that we don't own a set of lungs, we own a medicine cabinet with a lot of different shelves.
Yeah.
You breathe a certain way, you elicit a certain response for your body. And we just did a really relaxing session, right? Just then.
Yeah.
Notice how now, even it's somehow strange how the more we relax, the more energy we have to do what we want to do.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And, and I know that this ties into sleep, but there was a question that I wanted to ask you, Tim, was, when you were in the special forces, and you mentioned this a little bit, but you weaponized sleep against enemies. But what's the takeaway for us regular dudes on that? Like, should we look at that as for ourselves to say, hey, let's not weaponize sleep against ourselves and try to find better ways to have good, meaningful sleep?
Well, look, a lot of people are busy as they're doing a bunch of stuff. And when someone talks about sleep, here's a hack you can do at the end of the day.
Right.
I'm like, who's going to remember that? I'm already hanging on to enough. Okay. Right. So what I encourage people to do is you're already doing enough in all the other areas of life. Okay. So it's not a case of doing more. It's a case of focusing, become a boss of your sleep, because that's the universal lever. That's the one thing that will improve your income, because it's, here's a fun fact. Sleep poor people take twice as many sick days as everyone else because your immune system goes to hell.
Yeah.
And it's not just absenteeism, it's presenteeism. Okay. You can be 30 to 40% less productive because you're not really cognizant in your workplace. So if that can amount to, tens of thousands of dollars annually to an employer, but if you've got your own business, imagine what you being 30 to 40% less productive would cost you, your family, and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of people get really lost and get more fatigued by trying to do all this extra stuff in their conscious waking hours. I'm like, you're already doing enough. Let's work on the unconscious hours and having you treat that like a place of, rest, connection, deep restoration. And you give yourself a goddamn break,
Exactly.
And once you do that, you'll be very surprised how magically all these other things in your life start getting better. The only warning I would say is some people are fatigued because if they've got $10 worth of energy, they're spending 12.
Right.
All right. They're always trying to get more by doing more, but they don't realize they're spending more than they can regenerate. So, the mistake I made early in my thing was I created more energy in people. We created $15, but then they would go and spend $20 a day.
Right.
If you create 20, that's 25. So there is a certain thing where you've got to go, you know what, this thing here is the most valuable thing in my life. Everything outside of my own skin is secondary to what's underneath my own skin. And once you start investing in this sort of sub-skin surface, energy is like money. How you invest it is how you get it back. And every dollar you invest underneath your own skin, you'll get like $1,000 back. It's the most guaranteed return on energy investment you'll have. So treating that like a priority and not always sort of going, well, it's out there. No, it's actually in here. Because, and that wasn't an easy lesson for me to learn, Nathan. I had to learn.
If you're like most of us men, we think we know everything, right, Tim? And we just go and no, we'll just push that down and we'll just think about it later, right?
Yeah. It wasn't until I went through a divorce, lost house, home, regular access to kids, sleeping on the couch in my parents' place, that I realized that everything outside of my own skin, I cannot control. But guess what? What's underneath my skin, Tim gets a say in that. And that's when I started saying, I'm going to have to return to my own sovereignty here. Because I put it to everybody here, when you're at 100% inside yourself, there's not a goddamn thing you cannot do.
Yeah.
But if you're only at 10%, life is hard because life is hard at 10% when you're only functioning at 10%. So it makes a lot of sense to invest in yourself, get yourself to 100%, and then all of a sudden life starts getting a whole lot easier because you've actually become a sovereign person. You're not chasing stuff outside of yourself.
Yeah, that's such great information for our listeners, for anybody out there to know, because you're right. I think a lot of us, Tim, focus on those things that we cannot control. Generally, it has something to do with somebody else, maybe something that comes in from a job, whatever. But you're absolutely right. We can sit there and stress about those things as much as we want, but we can't control them. But what we can control is ourselves. And like you said, what's under the skin. And if we can do that, and if we can use techniques like this, get better sleep, we're just going to have a better overall life in general, which is fantastic.
And it's easier than people know.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's more to breath work than what we just did, but that is the first step, and just those 3 little breaths, well, not little, but those 3 breaths that we took together and guided together totally changed the way I felt. Not saying that I felt bad coming in here, but I feel even better now after having done that, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're naturally energetic, but we often carry blockages we don't even know we're carrying. And then we start doing these compensatory behaviors. So people ask me, how do you know you've got a mental problem? When I was going through my PTSD, I told everyone I was fine, but I could not drink like more than 10 beers a night. I just couldn't end my day without drinking that much. So I would just look at, when you come up against something, what's your consumption rate? Are you consuming something outside of yourself to find balance, or are you consuming something inside of yourself? Yep. Because we don't want to ignore the imbalance, but how we choose to find balance, if we choose something outside of ourselves, we can create a dependency. And there's a lot of our consumer society depends on you saying, I can't do this for myself. Here, take my money, do it for me.
Exactly. Or we don't want to do it for ourselves, right? We get lazy because we think, oh, it's going to be too much work. It's going to be too much. But even just simple 3 breaths that we just took, that's a good start to get where you're going. But you're absolutely right, because I know for myself, I had a time too, Tim, when I was dealing with PTSD that I would turn to the bottle, and I would be the same way you are, have a dozen beers a night, or, drink a half a bottle of Jack Daniels in a night. And, that is not healthy at all. Alcohol really wasn't the problem. That was the solution to whatever problem we were having. But the fact that we can now look at alternative ways to try to deal with those problems without going to some type of foreign substance is amazing to me.
Yeah, well, look, alcohol for a short period of time has you feel open, removes those blockages, so that is somewhat of a healthy state to be in, but people don't know that breath work can create the same state.
Yeah.
Last week I was working with a bunch of high school students, and all of them were laughing, carrying on, and kind of pushing each other. And I said, look, this state you're in, because this was after breath work, right? I said, this state you're in, is very similar to what alcohol can do for you. Us humans, we love being in altered states. We love altering our states. Now because right now on our planet, there's like 7 billion people, but there's a $540 billion illegal drug spend. Okay. Some people might say, oh, that's really bad. I just say, look, us humans, we love altering our states, but we don't know how to do it for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a whole economy based on us not knowing that. So, but if we can create, getting high on our own supply regularly, having that open, unblocked freedom under our own control, or literally, I got a button I can press to give myself that state, then we can start all of a sudden getting ahead of everything. We're not reacting to things, because when I've got, 1 cent worth of, or 10 cents worth of energy, and I'm going into my day and someone takes 5 cents, then I'm like, you've got to give that back, But if I invest in me and I create $1 million, someone takes 5 cents, I'm not going to waste time chasing that 5 cents, because I know I can make another $1 million the next day. And essentially that's my goal for everyone, Nathan. I want them to live like energetic millionaires, because here's the thing. I was the guy that got taken from, and you've taken 50 cents from me. I'm going to spend the next 5 years thinking of ways I can get back at you, right? Because that was wrong. I'm right. And I'm chasing this 50 cents, and I've completely forgotten the fact that I can make $1 million the next day. And me not forgiving that person is me like drinking poison going, I hope it hurts you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And that's a great way to look at it too. Say we're going after that 50 cents when really I can make $1 million. So why are we dwelling on that? Right.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
I think part of it was, it's been this intergenerational patterning, my great, didn't hung on to something and didn't let it go, and it put it in his genetics. And now we're just kind of in this thing where, you've wronged me. I'm going to F you up and
exactly.
Like if we can be those energetic millionaires, and, okay, you've taken 50 cents from me, stay there, play with it. Unfortunately you've missed out on the rest of my life, And I'm gonna go on and hang out with other energetic millionaires who are in the same space. And knowing that we can return ourselves to abundance, that's a game changer. Because, we've all been hurt, and there's a part of us that goes, don't let that happen again. And so we create like a world to try and avoid getting hurt again. Like I didn't like shopping centers because, I found that when people didn't move in a way that I expected them to, when life didn't happen the way I expected it to, then I would get upset about that. Okay. And that would be a withdrawal. And then before I even got to that shopping center, I'm getting tense. I'm starting to have me agree with the idea that the shopping center is a terrible place.
Yeah.
Because I've only got 50 cents worth of energy, and I get very reactive. You see those people that are highly reactive is because, they need energy. And they don't know how to generate it for themselves. And people get really good in a world that doesn't know their own sovereignty, in a world that doesn't know how to generate their own energy. There's a whole group of people that get really good at taking from others,
right?
And hurting others. It's like a goddamn art form for them. And, we've all been on the receiving end of a very skilled person who knows how to hurt. And I got stuck for many years thinking, how am I going to get back at that person?
Right.
And it wasn't until I laid it out in an energetic spreadsheet that I'm like, okay, I could go after that person, but the only reason they took from me is because they can't generate energy for themselves. So effectively, they're a zero.
Yeah.
Okay. But these zeros get really good at playing the game of having people around them that they take from. So think of a line of a potential, an axis of potential. Their potential is fixed to a point relative to how many victims they have around them. Okay. And those victims don't often stick around, so they're often sort of rotating through the people in their life. So if that person might have kicked my ass, right, but if I go after them, I'm going to not get anything back because they're a zero, right?
Right.
But what I can do is I invest in me. I reinvest in me. I reinvest in me. I reinvest in me. I get stronger. I get stronger. I get stronger. And there's a great biblical saying, make my enemies dust beneath my feet. Mm-hmm. Meaning you become so much bigger than that thing that took from you that it's like you don't even know it's there because you're so much bigger than it. 5 cents. And, again, what I love telling high school students is a little analogy. I bring in a little Venus flytrap. I'm tangenting here, but I'm going somewhere with it. Like a little Venus flytrap. They're actually really small, right? Venus flytraps. And I say, look, does this scare anybody? And they're like, no. And I said, well, it shouldn't, but this thing to a fly, it's absolutely terrifying. Okay? And if that fly remains a fly, it's always going to be terrified of this little Venus flytrap. But if that fly had the human ability that we all have, that's our sovereign right to have, and grow ourselves, strengthen ourselves, develop ourselves, evolve ourselves, then that fly could evolve into a bird. The bird could evolve into a cat. The cat could evolve into a lion. Okay, now imagine that lion walking past that little Venus flytrap. It would laugh at itself that it ever took that thing seriously. And what I encourage the students to do, and I encourage everybody to do, is, think of everything that has hurt you or taken from you and just tell it, you're a Venus flytrap in the making. I'm going to use you to grow myself, strengthen myself. And you know what? Thank you. I would not have had the prompt to grow and outgrow myself if I hadn't been taken from. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, that was the best thing you could do for me.
Yeah, you're right, because you learn from it.
Well, yeah. I've usually found, unless we get a prompt, we don't start our journey of growth, strength, evolution.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, because if you're just sitting there on your own, you're just going to keep doing what you know, right? And so you need a prompt. You need something like a podcast episode with Tim showing us how to breathe. And, these are the things that we need, because you're absolutely right. And that, one of the reasons why I think podcasts are great platforms is because you and I can, have these discussions, share them with our listeners, and give people an alternative to think about when they're trying to improve themselves. And, this is a great platform to do that. But it's wonderful that we have the ability and the technology to get together. I mean, we're all the way across the world from each other today. And, but we can sit here and talk and have these things. And I have a lot of listeners here in the U.S. that may have never heard you before, Tim. And now I could bring you to them. And hopefully this will be that, give them a little nudge to move them towards the next step, to start healing themselves and start putting that investment in themselves instead of trying to get it back from other people.
And unfortunately, my journey of healing was prompted by the fact that my dumb shit doesn't die with me. Okay? It's not going to stop when I go into the grave. I'm going to pass my dumb stuff onto my kids. And if I don't have kids, I'm going to pass it on to everyone I know. Right. I've never met my great-grandfather, but I'm pretty sure he was an angry dude, and he passed that forward on a genetic level. And I've had to struggle with it, and I don't know why. But you know what? It's up to me to heal myself so that, my kids or everyone who knows me can bring their gifts into the world. And I think if you were to ask me what my best contribution to the world would be, is to allow people to bring their gifts into the world, to serve at their highest level. And my piece of that input is having people see just how wonderful their bodies are and how that we're a self-healing unit. We're not broken. We never were. Okay. We've just got a blockage or two that once we remove, then it's ironic, but it's not as blokes, we tend to think it's what we do that adds value to others. Not always the case.
Right.
I often say it's what we've come through that gives value to others. And I really want people that are listening to draw this question close to themselves, because you're about to discover your tribe if you answer these questions correctly. So everyone is up against something. You know, everybody has a place they want to get to, but there's obstacles in the way of getting there. Okay. My obstacle was PTSD, and I was in a psychologist's office. And after spilling, my guts about everything I saw in service in Afghanistan, this guy wasn't just apathetic or incompetent. He wasn't just incompetent. He was apathetic. He didn't give a crap that I was there or not. Right. And then at the end, he's like, "Do you think it was a problem with your mum and dad?" All right. And at that moment, everything froze. Nathan, I remember it. I saw his glass framed psychology degree. And in my state of disconnect, do you remember how pain makes you feel alone and isolated? And when you're alone and isolated, you can self-justify everything. So I'm like, it makes a lot of sense to grab that glass frame and feed it down his throat. So because this guy, he says he's a healer, but he's not just not healing, he's hurting people. So it made a lot of sense to me. I'm helping people by removing this guy. And I got a certain skill set, right? And I'm getting out of my chair to do this. Okay. And then as I do this, I felt this hand on my chest and words like, "Red flag, Tim. You are the strongest mofo you know, and you are struggling in a system that doesn't seem to want to help people. It seems to make more money from you if you stay sick."
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'm like, "Tim, how many other people do you think are in the same situation as you right now, struggling with what you're struggling with?" And I sat back down and I felt kind of lost, but that's when I saw him. I saw, about 500,000 people on my left and 500,000 people on my right just appear, and they're all looking in saying, "Tim, if you can find a way forward for you, you can find a way forward for us."
Yep.
And Tim, it doesn't matter if it takes you a week, a month, a year, a decade. That's how much time you're going to be able to save us, Yep. And that's how we break our own isolation. This is how we find our tribe, because when we're all alone, we can justify all sorts of crazy crap. That was classically the villain hero moment. I'd be in jail right now for murder.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I could be in a space where I'm contributing. And the question everyone needs to ask themselves is, what am I up against right now? We're all up against something. And genuinely ask yourself, how many others are in the same situation right now? And don't bullshit yourself. Give it a number. Give it whatever number that is. For me, it was 1 million. And across the planet right now, there's probably 1 million people up against what you're up against. And start seeing that you are no longer making an inch of progress. You're making 1 million inches of progress. Every single simple action you do, you're doing it for 1 million people. So you're no longer 1 in 1 million. You are 1 million in 1.
That makes a lot of sense, Tim. I love that outlook, because you're right. And that the fact that you sat there and said, "I can't be the only one going through this," and you knew you weren't, right? Because how many veterans go through PTSD, just using that as an example? There's millions and millions throughout the world that suffer from that. But for you to sit there and say, "Hey, instead of me shoving this guy's degree down his throat, I'm going to sit here and say, you know what? This guy's not helping, but I can find a way that I can not only help myself, but help millions of others people as well."
Well, it's amazing how many more options you get when you become more energetic. Loneliness, isolation, that's probably the biggest blockage us humans can carry. We're not made for it. In fact, it's the beginning of the end in many ways. So when we break our isolation and we connect to all those people, then you get more energy, more options. Things that you never even saw before become open and available. I never saw myself as a healer or someone who's into breath work, but as you move forward, you'll find tools. Some won't work, but some will work so well that you feel compelled to share them with others.
Yep.
And and those people left and right of you, some of them you haven't met yet, but they're going to say words to this effect. Nathan, we are so glad that back in 2025, you made certain decisions to help you move forward. And it might have taken you a week, a month, a year, a decade, but that's the amount of time you've saved us because you've connected us into something super powerful, and that to me is probably the closest thing to a genuine human superpower. I mean, imagine one conversation with you, Nathan, saving me 10 years of my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you really want to go through the looking glass on this one, Nathan, if you or anyone listening is getting anything from our conversation, they were actually there with me in April 2011, filling me on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were actually there, Yeah,
that's amazing. And that's a great outlook too, Tim, for not only that you did it, but for our listeners, myself, to sit there and look at and say, if I've got this, what can I do? But not what can I do for just me? What can I do for millions of people? And think about the broader picture. And, that leads to some really great stuff. Like you said, getting, it gives people that time. Like you and I having this conversation, someone might have it and say, you know what, you just saved 10 years of my life, like you said. And that's amazing to me that, number one, that you went and said, you know what, you tried something, it didn't work for you. Right. And I'm, with the psychologist.
Oh, look, and we're always resistant to doing the things that are hard. But what I've discovered is that something's only hard if you can't see the self-benefit. So you can work your ass off and it doesn't mean anything, right?
Right.
Or you might not get any acknowledgement. So it's a really good opportunity to find out and create your reason for service. If I was doing service because I wanted a status, then that comes crumbling down and I lose motivation if I don't get the status, if I don't get the acclamation. And I got to own that a lot of my life I was doing stuff for status. As a professional,
a lot of us do, until we get to a point in life where we're just like, you know what, status doesn't really mean as much as it used to, right?
Well, some people get to it sooner than others. My son, he's into, like me, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like submission wrestling.
Yeah.
And he was due to fight as a white belt in the state titles. But he was getting close to his blue belt, and they said, look, go fight in the state titles, win it, come back, we'll get your blue belt. And I called up Corbin, my son, and I said to him, look, I'm going to have a conversation with you that I wish someone had with me when I was a white belt. Do you want to win or do you want to get stronger? Okay.
Yep.
Because if I'm being honest, when I was your age, I wanted to win. I wanted the trophy. I wanted everyone to say, Tim, you're the freaking man. Okay. I was obviously insecure enough that was like a real need for me. Right. So I didn't want to get promoted to my blue belt. I might lose. I want to be the champion. Everyone say I'm awesome, right? And I say, Corbin, you can fight in the white belt division. There's no pressure. Your coach actually wants you to do that. I just want to ask you something that no one asked me. Do you want to? Because he knew that he's only like 19, and he knew if he was fighting in the blue belt, he's fighting adult men that are, probably 6 years more experienced than him. And I said, Corbin, there's no wrong decision. There's no pressure, but I just want you to see that your physical output can be an affirmation of how you want to live your life, And then there was like 10 minutes silence. And then he goes, you know what? I reckon I could give those blue belts hell,
I like that. Yeah.
And I want to
think about it. And yeah,
I want to try and share something here. I've got a photograph that is on my, here we go. Can you see that?
Wow. Look at that.
Right. So that's my son, Corbin. He's squatting down. He's like 6'4", 5. But I had embroidered on his blue belt, give him hell.
I love that.
And he went into the state titles. He got his ass absolutely kicked. But he didn't give an inch. You know, he gave him absolute hell, like the type of fight where the guy had him in an arm bar and he's going, nah, F you, you know, and the guy's cranking it. He's like, nah, F you. And, you know, the guy got a superior position, got his back. Corbin wasn't giving up his you know, his neck, and this guy was breaking his face with his, you know, the bones in your wrist.
Yeah.
And so Corbin was bleeding all over the mat. Okay. And at the end, the other guy won, but he was so exhausted that his next fight, he just kind of fell over.
Oh, wow.
You know? And I said,
Yeah.
Corbin, you know that if you had a rematch with that guy, you would have won. He goes, yeah, no, I saw
exactly.
that. And I said, but you wouldn't have had an opportunity to get that drawn out of you. You know, the world we live in is far too comfortable for us to find out the limits of our physical body. So you actually getting into combat, and you would never have that opportunity in combat. There's a guy trying to break your arm, and you're going, nah, it's my goddamn willpower and training that's stopping you. There's a guy smashing your nose, you know, you're bleeding. You wouldn't have had that experience. You wouldn't have had to sort of tap into that energetic state had you not, because, you know, again, we live in a very comfortable world. So I don't know how we got onto that subject, but I just...
Yeah, we were talking about your dad and, you know, how you could get your mindset and setting your, you know, what your reasoning for something, for doing something, really setting your true north, right? I mean, yeah, that's awesome. No, thanks for sharing that too, because that's great. That's great information too, to just, you know, get out there and share things with. I just love the fact that, and we've talked, you know, about an hour now, but an hour and a half, but you know, what you're saying, these are all things that seem to be pretty common sense things too, but we don't normally think about it that way, you know? And it's just, it's amazing that, you know, you sit here and you hear these things, you're like, wow, that's so simple to do, but we never thought about it.
Well, the good thing about what happens when you're in a place of complete fatigue, you have to tap into not your own strength, but something like a universal truth. And you have to really align with that, because you got nothing left yourself. So I was blessed to completely destroy myself to the point of wanting to take my own life, to discover something that actually worked, a universal truth, an alignment. And so when I share these things, people kind of already know this, but when you're in that really low state, you can articulate it in such a way where people can grab that powerful connection in far less time than it took you to establish. Does that make sense? So once you have it, it's because this isn't stuff that I've invented. No, this is just stuff that I've discovered. I'm literally saying, listen, if you get your solar panel and line it up to the sun, you'll get heaps of energy. And they're like, oh, right, I am not the sun. I'm just the guy that, yes, you do need to listen to initially to get your alignment. But then once you've got it, like happy days, high five, you're on your way.
Absolutely. You know, Tim, I wanted to ask you, because it's in your background and this is your whole thing, but breath work in bed. So I know we've talked about breath work, we've talked about sleeping, but give us a little update about what breath work in bed is all about.
Sure. Well, this is my offering for people to make the most powerful adjustments easy and effortlessly. And I've generally found it's the things that are easy and effortless I can do regularly. And Breathwork in Bed is a simple online resource. You're going to get it on your phone. You tell it when you want to sleep, when you want to wake up, and then we take care of the rest. It just falls out of your phone. So as you go into sleep, you just hit that button. It'll guide your breath to alkalize your neural pathways, bring restoration, peace, calm, power into your body, and you will sleep. Literally tonight, you will turn your bed into a cloud. Really good for when if you're moving around too, in the way that, like, if you're on the road, you're traveling different spaces.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Like my wife and I have what's called, I don't know if you have it in Australia, but they're called a sleep number bed, where they have adjustable air coils and they can adjust up and down and all this, you know, to your body. But it's funny because that's exactly what I was thinking about. I don't necessarily have as much trouble sleeping at home, just because we do have, you know, a good bed. But when I go on the road, I'm missing my bed, you know? So these exercises, I could definitely see how that could help you, especially on the road.
Well, and this is what I like about this, and this is why, you know, natural and immediate, 2 words. Okay. And this is what breath work will do, but people don't want another hack. They're mostly busy enough. So if you can just have that little notification on your phone that you can just press play and tells you to breathe a certain way. And I do stand by the fact that breath work does need to be coached. Even because if you start breathing on your own, you kind of lose track because you lose cadence. But if you have that little thing going, breathe in, breathe out, because that's how we tap into the medicine. Okay. There's medicine there, but it's a bit like, I've got a headache. I'll take a Panadol and I'll just lick the Panadol and expect the headache to go.
Right.
You need a certain dose of breath for it to actually unlock the medicine. So that's why, having that little notification where you can just press play and it'll guide you. But here's the game changer. Here's where people get really surprised. It's not just breath work to sleep. It's breath work out of bed. So when you wake up in the morning, your alarm will go off and you'll see the notification there. You'll press that. It'll guide you to breathe a certain way to energize the body. When you wake up, you're often feeling like lead. Yeah. Breath work turns that lead into gold. So before you even hit the ground, you've done your breathing, you've massaged certain points that have got the stuck energy in, and then your feet are hitting the floor in a very, very different state. And, I wake up and I'm a complete bear. So if I can have something that's automatic that I don't have to think about.
Oh, goodness,
right? I've won the first 5-10 minutes of the day.
Absolutely.
And if you can win the first 5 or 10 minutes of the day easy and effortlessly, you are going to be killing it for the rest of the day. You've established your normal for the day early. This is how I want to live my life. This is the type of person I want to be. This is the energetic, millionaire I want to live as. And then the rest of the day, if you find yourself dipping from that energetic state, I'm going to return to my breath, So this is what the genius of breathwork in bed is. It gives you two of the most powerful assets in your life easily and effortlessly.
And it's something that you said, like part of your daily routine is that you like to do your breath work in the morning and you like to do it before you go to bed. And breath work in bed does that for you. You don't even have to think about it. That's amazing. I love that, Tim, because as well as I do with busy adults nowadays, and even our younger kids, like you talk with, high schoolers and stuff, we're always on the go, always doing something. So when we can do something for ourselves without putting a lot of thought into it, I think that's a huge game changer for us. It's not a hack, right? We're not saying that this is not a life hack. This is a new way to live your life and get your evening or your nighttime started right, and then your day started right.
And it's a really returning to self. This isn't anything new. When you do breath work right, it feels like coming home. I am me without the blockages.
Yeah.
And I might also add, sorry, just to jump in there, breath work in bed is your best friend at 2 a.m. if you wake up and can't get back to sleep. Because a lot of people are so exhausted, their body goes to sleep, but their mind's still woo, woo, woo,
that's
right?
That's me.
Okay. And the thing is too, the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease. Okay. So when you go to sleep, your body does a big, deep clean through all your internal organs, all your brain. So if you can give that a big oxygen boost before you go to sleep, that will enable you to sleep in a way that restores you, not just sleep in a way because you're exhausted. Because if you go to sleep just because you're exhausted and you haven't placated the stress in your mind, people often wake up at 2 a.m. and they can't get back to sleep because the mind runs the night. So what I'm trying to say here is your best friend in the world at 2 a.m. is this Breathwork in Bed app, because you just press that sleep button and you guide your breath and you're like, oh, there it is, and you get back to sleep. Nice. Now, I do need to speak to something right now. So do you remember how I said your mind likes to run the show?
Yes.
And it keeps you disconnected from your body. So it can get essentially all the energy. Now, the way I see it is this, and I discovered this, like I said, post-divorce, lost my house, home, all my money, sleeping on the couch in my parents' place, lost regular contact to kids. It was 2 a.m., and you could bet my head was doing 1,000,000 miles an hour, right, thinking all this stuff, right? And this is where this comes from. So this is why I'm confident in offering it to others, and I know it will work for them. My head, think of it like a garden. Whatever you water grows. And for years, I was watering the weeds of stress. And in that moment, the stress weeds were loving it, because stress weeds, they grow and grow and grow until eyeballs pop out of them, and they actually become sentient. They become these sentient things in your head that are aware of the things that feed them, and they're very aware of the things that starve them. And they want you to do the things that feed them. So a small dose of this is, before you do exercise, there's always a part of you go, oh, do I really want to do this? Can we do this later? Can we put this off? Okay, that's the disempowered parts of you aware that you're about to become powerful. So they scream the loudest when they know they're about to be kicked out. You see how that works?
Yeah, it totally makes sense too, because it's, you think about, here with like your lawn, the weeds will grow the fastest because all they need is water and dirt, but your grass, it could choke out your grass that needs a little bit more nourishment, maybe a couple of more, different, items to make it grow faster, thicker, whatever it may be. But those weeds will just go forever. And I love that you use that analogy of those stress weeds, because you're right. When a weed takes root and it grows, it'll grow. It doesn't take much to make it grow.
And like I said, they get to a certain point where they become sentient. We almost define ourselves on those weeds. Like, I was an angry dude, and I was known as the angry dude that no one messed with. Okay. And I got a sense of self-worth about that, and I defined myself by that. But what I didn't know, and this is my point here. At 2 a.m., the stress weeds were loving it. I was feeding them. And even though I knew that breath work would bring me peace, it's like I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because these stress weeds didn't want me to breathe, because they would get kicked out. Yep. And so I'm at the as low as a human can get, right? And I get out of bed, I'm about to do self-harm, pills, drugs, alcohol, maybe all three. And I'm like, this is so stupid. I know that breathing will bring me peace, but I can't breathe right now. And so I looked at my left thumb. I said, Tim, you can take one breath. Take one fucking breath. And I drove it into my chest. I'm like, oh, crap, that worked. Okay, let's take two. And I drove 2 fingers into my chest. Okay, this is working. Take 3. And I'm driving finger after finger, breath after breath, get to 5, get to 10. And then somewhere between 15 and 25 breaths, those fucking stress weeds got kicked out. And the rest of my brain was like, thank fuck you kicked them out. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Tim, this is working. Keep doing it. Keep doing it, Tim. This is working. And that was the origin story of breathwork in bed, because I started making these little stupid recordings that I would listen to and that actually work by breathing a certain way. Oh my gosh, it didn't make any sense, but it worked. So I'm like, let's just keep pressing that button. And I thought, well, how about I give other people buttons that they can press when they need it,
Yeah, I love that. And that's, again, like I said, Tim, that was one of the reasons that, main reason I wanted to have you on, because I know sleep's so important. I've heard a lot about breath work, and I've seen, I read your stories and how it's helped you. And, like you said, if it can help you, it can help a million other people. And, I've suffered with PTSD. So I know you probably had even more severe PTSD than I have, being in special forces. But, it's good to hear this, because I think people need to know that there are alternatives out there. There are things that work, that doesn't take money, doesn't take a lot of money, doesn't take a lot of, you don't have to have medications. You could do it all on your own. And, like you said, with your phone, you have a nice guided breathing thing, and you can start your day off with it, and you can finish your day with it, and just have a better overall life. And I mean, ultimately, that's what we're all looking for, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's great. And Tim, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about generosity, because I know you have a lot of it. So I know you have a lot of it, but you've raised over $1 million for charities. And,
correct.
So I wanted to know, what is your secret sauce of generosity? How did this come up? Were you always, of a generous mind, or did the breath work help you get that way? How, give us a little background on what you've done with the $1 million.
Sure. Well, it wasn't a pair of rose-colored glasses that had me think this way. It was literally at very low points in my life. And I noticed that if you invested in others, it somehow helped you as well, right? But the act of generosity had to be done from your abundance, not from yourself, okay? So if you want to hack your brain, like the science is now caught up, you create a bunch of serotonin, dopamine, whenever you do an act of generosity, a genuine, sincere act of generosity. And it doesn't just stay with you. The person you do it to, they get a hit. And anyone observing it gets a hit as well. Okay, it's just amazing. So you remember how I said, if you can see the self-benefit in something, it's not hard. So I'm being selfishly wise when I'm actively generous with people. And generosity shows whether you're in a genuine state of abundance or not, or you're kidding yourself. Okay. So my saying these days is, I don't give of myself anymore, Nathan. I give of my abundance. Gotcha. So that morning breath work, that creates a really deep, energetic connection inside of myself. and I'm abundant. And if I was just adequate, here's what I noticed happens. If I was just 100%, say, and I gave 10% to somebody, there's a part of me that says, you know what? I'm down to 90%. You better do something with that 10%. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would put attachments, and I would give and give and give. And I was still, productive in what I did, but every 6 or 7 weeks, I'd have to write myself off for like 3 days with alcohol because I'd be giving of myself, not of my abundance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So now generosity happens as a natural flow-on effect. I connect inside of myself. I create energy inside of myself, but that's actually only half of the connection. Full circle connection means, not just connecting underneath your own skin, but you connect powerfully inside your own skin to then connect powerfully outside of your own skin. Connect with somebody else. If you want to double your energy and connection, connect to somebody else with an act of generosity. And it doesn't necessarily have to be to another human being. One thing I like to do is acts of generosity to the environment. So if I see cigarette butts and a bin, I'll always pick up the cigarette butts. I don't particularly like doing it, but it's funny. Right. Doing the things you don't want to do creates a heap of energy for all the things you do want to do. It's funny how that works, Yeah.
And you know what? I've never thought of it like that either, because I do some of the same things. Like if the wife and I are out walking around the neighborhood, we see trash on the ground, I'll pick it up and carry it with me till I get home and then throw it in the trash bin. And, I never thought of that as being an act of generosity, but you're right. It's something nobody else has to do, and it's cleaning up for the environment a little bit.
We'll also see the fact that you now have 1 million people left and right of you. Okay. That you're not just picking up one piece of rubbish. You're picking up 1 million pieces of rubbish.
Yeah.
You see the power in that? There is 1 million hands reaching down with you to pick that thing up. And that's when you start seeing you becoming not the one in the million, but the million in one.
Yes. I still love that. That's such a great, just the idea of that phrase, not 1 in a million, but 1 million in one. It really makes you feel empowered, and to know that you're not alone, right? And we get away from that isolation by having that good positive mindset like that.
And this is where generosity is such a powerful affirmation of that. Because if I was at 100% and I gave 10%, like I said, I'd be down to 90%. But if I invest in me first and I create like 1,000% more than I need, because that's how we're supposed to be living life, energetic millionaires. I can give away 20% a day. I can do that consistency. People can love it, hate it, tell me to F off. It really doesn't matter. Right. I'm in touch with something so much more powerful than what can be taken from me.
Yes.
And to me, that's about the most empowering statement, knowing that I'm in touch with something so much more powerful than what can be taken from me.
Yeah. Yeah. And your generosity wasn't only, I know you've raised $1 million, for charities, but your generosity didn't stop there, because you set out to save 40 veterans from suicide in a single year. And you actually did that, didn't you?
The goal wasn't to do it in a year. The goal was to spend the rest of my life doing it, because I had no idea how to do it. But we just noticed that if we could break someone's isolation and get them out of fatigue, it's like this natural golden compass would open up, and they would put their branches in the sun and they would grow, So once you understand how it works, it's amazing how little resources you need to get people to really flourish. And again, I came through this from the veteran space, but this is accessed from all human endeavors. Could be breast cancer, could be whatever it is. And generosity is such a indicator of your internal health, because if you can genuinely do it without any attachments, without any expectations, that means you're in a state of abundance. And you know what? Even when if you want to just do it for selfish reasons and biohack your brain with all the good chemicals, being generous to others, even if it costs you like a $5, coffee for the guy behind you, that $5 investment in someone else sets you up so powerfully inside yourself. And so there's a bit of the alternate space, the woo-woo space. Yes, there's times to, invest in yourself, but if you're only ever investing in yourself, you may as well live with your head up your own ass. You're really, right, you're just becoming this inverted. It's all about me. No, yes, it needs to start with me, but it needs to permeate past my own skin. Powerful connections inside of me create powerful connections outside of me, and that is the key, being able to bring the goodness out of you and pay it forward in a way where you're not attached. You're committed to being generous, but you're not attached to the outcome, because for years I did it with an expectation of something should happen because I've pushed something outside of my own skin, as opposed to, my name's Tim and I connect to myself first and I always connect to others. And it doesn't have to be too hard. Like, one of the best things I like doing is picking up my phone and sending a voicemail message to somebody, just going, "G'day, mate. How you doing?" Or sending someone a text going, "Good morning. How you doing?" Like, that is so super powerful. Just challenge people right now to send, 3 texts to people. Once you wake up, you connect yourself, just say, "Good morning, Nathan. Good morning."
Yeah.
Send that to 3 people and just observe the impact, my friends. This is how easy it is to tap into this amazing sort of energetic state, because when we connect to others, there is something that happens so powerfully inside of ourselves, but it's really hard if we don't connect to ourselves first.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I love that feedback, because not only are we self-centering for ourselves, but then that is bringing us the opportunity to then bring other people in, get rid of that isolation, do things for other folks, like you, saving veterans from suicide. That's a huge thing. I'm a big proponent of that. I love to give to charities here in the US to try to prevent that, because I know there's a lot of, veteran suicides every day. Not only in our country, but all over the world, from anybody who's served. And the fact that we can not only center ourselves, but then do something for others, because we have that abundance, now that we're doing different things and focusing on what we should be focusing on, now we could bring other people into the fold. And like you said, instead of being 1 in a million, we're 1,000,001.
Yeah, you laid out a very good roadmap to being powerful there, Nathan. And
I just copied what you said.
Well, I mean, to me, I think we're most happiest, we feel safest, we feel most powerful to the level of which we are connected to ourselves and connected to others, and strangely, the outside world tends to mirror the amount of connection we have inside of ourselves.
Yeah.
If we're hurting, hurt people. And if someone's trying to hurt you, that's got nothing to do with you. They, in fact, I said this to my 19-year-old daughter yesterday. I said, it's like this. I couldn't be genuinely good to you if I wasn't genuinely good myself. You get that concept?
Mm-hmm.
Well, conversely, I couldn't try and hurt you if I wasn't hurting myself. Yep. So understand that when someone tries to hurt you, that's got nothing to do with you. Hurt people. They are hurting so much that they have to pay it forward. But if we don't see that, if we don't understand that, we end up becoming that person that, I got hurt, then it's okay for me to hurt someone else.
Yeah.
And this will just roll through the generations until someone goes, "Nope, I'm being a sovereign mofo. I'm going to return to my breath. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to outgrow all this stuff. I'm going to become that energetic millionaire while you guys are playing with 5-cent pieces."
Yep. No, you're right. And you have to, and that is really a mindset shift too, right? In itself, to say, I'm not going to sit here and just wallow and be isolated, but, I'm going to actually do something about it. And, that's a hard step to take for some people.
Well, it's impossible if you're feeling like you're all alone, and it's near impossible if you're very fatigued. So everyone's trying to fix problems out here, like, why is that person so angry? Well, how about we get to the root cause, which is, they're feeling alone. And people do a good job of isolating themselves. They'll attack people because they unconsciously know that if I attack people and they leave me alone, when I'm isolated, I can self-justify everything. So a lot of veterans who are hurting just drop off the map, because then I can isolate, then I can just become my own echo chamber. So it's very easy to mimic that behavior. It kind of starts in high school,
It really
group
does.
of people, they hurt me, I'm going to get them back, and we're going to do this. And you never will get above that level until you actually look and go, well, I actually need some healing. And healing isn't about, this is what I tell guys, healing isn't about sitting on a mountaintop and eating tofu and celery. I mean, it's fine if you want to do it, but to me, it's about getting rid of all that wasted energy on my past with the healing, then that energy that I was wasting on my past can be with me now. And I can kick ass in this moment right now. I can generate the future I want because, that thing that I'm not, that thing that's blocking me from my past could be blocking up to 50% of my energy. So if I deal with that, that means I got 50% more in this moment. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely. And, speaking of men, because, I know a lot of us, even though I do have female listeners on Just a Dude podcast, we call them our dudettes, I do want to talk about men though for a second, because I know that, us both being men, this could probably help us, but what's your best advice for, men like us, or really any man navigating mental health, and, your thoughts on why it matters now more than ever?
Sure. I'll tell you what I told my own son, and that is, a man's happiness and generosity is relative to how powerful he feels. When us men feel powerful, we are happy, we are generous. That's the way we're built. And if you want to see an unhappy, stingy man, that's because they don't feel powerful. And the role of the masculine is to create that space where people feel safe around you. You're happy, you're generous. You can create around you, I feel safe to be that person. And you can sort of, to go to the other end of that, to highlight the good, I need to highlight the bad. There's these guys that, he's a badass, be careful around him. The opposite end of what we're here to give, create safety, is we create a sense of unsafety. We'll use violence. He's not a badass, he's a weak ass. He's so weak, he has to take from others. He makes people feel fear because he's not powerful. He's so disempowered that he has to take from others or give them the fear of violence. Okay. Right. And this is where it gets confused. You want men to be truly powerful. And what I tell my son is that starts with you. You have to get that sovereign power back. And the Chinese have been saying this for thousands of years. Right. First the body, then the mind. First the body, then the mind. When you engage with our physicality, and that's somewhat difficult to do. You don't know how strong the current is until you start swimming against it. The current world we live in has such a low expectation of your physical body. Mm-hmm. We're feeling disconnected from our physical body. We're looking at our phones, that creates a physical disconnect. And a man's power is how connected he is to his physical body. And what I've observed is if you can connect to that power and you feel like, hell yeah, then you can be happy, you can be generous. And the feminine senses that. And then when the feminine feels safe, she can be generous and she can be happy. Because what I've noticed is if just like the masculine, if the masculine's not powerful, he switches from making people feel safe to making people feel unsafe. Okay. I've observed the feminine, if she doesn't feel safe, I should start with, if she feels safe, she wants the masculine to be powerful. She builds up the masculine is happier and generous and just this reciprocation. But if the feminine doesn't feel safe, just like she's there to sort of give power, she gets really good at taking power. A disempowered feminine, just like a masculine man, the masculine who's disempowered will try and take from others. The feminine tries to take power from others, character assassinations, taking them down. And people can get really good at saying those words that hurt, because if they're not feeling safe, they start taking. But when they do start feeling safe, they start giving. And like I said, the same applies in masculine and feminine, but us men, we have to own that space. And you'll find, I will just say, observe when you connect to yourself first and do your physical activity like an affirmation of who you are. Like you're not doing it to look a certain way in the mirror, although it's always good to look a certain way. But if you can use every single rep and visualize that everything in your life is getting closer and closer. So before I do a run, before I do a set of 10, I said, if all I have to do to get everything in my life and bring it closer to me is these 10, push-ups or 10 whatever I'm going to do, would I do it? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, every single step, everything's getting closer to me. Every single rep, everything I care about is getting stronger and stronger. And this is the kind of power that once you access, you are naturally happy. You are naturally generous. And when you find yourself dropping out of that, return to the source, return to the source. You know, life is a continual return. But unfortunately, us blokes, we tend to give value to those who can tolerate duress for extended periods.
You're right.
Okay.
Yep.
And there is a time and a place for that. This country is made great by it. But there's a big but with that. If you're always thrashing your car and you never put fuel into it and you never give it a service, what do you think is going to happen to the car?
Yeah, it's going to break down. You're done. Right.
Yeah. So as much as there is a time to thrash it, and you know, I want to
time to maintain it too. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get the most out of my body, of course, and I'll never find out unless I thrash it and push it. But, you know, if that becomes if I attach my sense of self-worth to what I do, you know, I get my sense of self-worth from, say, fixing cars. So I've got to fix 5 cars a day, 10 cars a day, 50, go more, you know, because if I stop fixing cars and if I do nothing, then I'm worth nothing. You know, so this is how guys burn themselves out. We attach our sense of self-worth to what we do, not who we are.
Yeah, it is so funny. That's something that I used to, you know, back when I was in law enforcement, that is something that I struggled with. You know, I identified as a police officer, not as Nathan, you know, and when I got out of police work and started doing other things, it was really hard for me to make that transition because that job was so much of a part of me that I had to figure out who I really was. But that's a great point. I just wanted to, you know, bring up on that because you're right, especially, and I don't know if it's just men, women could probably do it too, but we always tend to put a lot in our work and try to make it a big part of who we are, when in reality, we should be focusing more on who we actually are and not, you know, making our work who we are.
Well, true. But one thing we discovered one thing we do in warfare is we find the enemy's center of gravity. Okay. And once you attack that center of gravity, you off center them and you can pretty much push them in any direction they're supposed to go. So One easy way to do it in Afghanistan was attack someone's sleep, you know, because you mess that up and everything gets off centered, right? When I returned to Civvy Street, dyslexic pattern recognition here, I saw that people's center of gravity is our sense of self-worth. And if someone could attack my sense of self-worth, oh, I feel completely worthless if I don't have a certain car. I don't want to feel worthless. And then my whole body goes, let's not feel worthless because that's pain. And then I'll create this structure and goals around this artificial, you know, focus point that doesn't serve me. But my sense of self-worth got attacked. And once you actually start looking at this, Nathan, and I encourage everyone who's listening to this, look around and see how many things are actively attacking your sense of self-worth. It's not a ad for exercise. It's an ad saying, well, you can't be happy with yourself unless you look a certain way. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't be happy unless you have these certain things. You know, there's so much out there that takes you away from your own sovereign nature. If you can see that before you left the house, you could give yourself all the things that you're looking for. You know, we tend to tell ourselves, oh, if I get that car, I'll be able to feel a certain way. Or what if I told you with your breath and your own skin, you could feel a certain way and you could have that sense of satisfaction. You could have that sense of, you know, self-worth. And then sure, you could pursue those things, but you'd be doing it from a position of strength. You'd be doing it from a position of abundance, not like, oh, okay, I'm not enough until I get to that point, you know?
Yeah, and then, you know, when you go against artificial things like that, like, oh, you know, I'm nothing unless I have this car, and then you get that car, and then guess what? Now you feel great for, you know, what, maybe a couple weeks, a month, maybe, and then all of a sudden you're looking for that next thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if we could, I mean, this is why I do about 2 hours of breath work a day, sunrise, sunset, okay? Because in those moments, if I genuinely connect to that which is inside of all of us, you could call it divine, you could call it spiritual, you could just call it unseen parts of yourself. But when you give yourself that deep satisfaction, power, connection, joy, then the impetus that any other voice outside of your own head gets taken away from, because you're listening not because you're feeling like you're lacking something. You're listening because you're wanting to create more of an abundance. I already have enough. You know, this is just something that lights me up if I want to do it. You know, this lights me up. Oh, that's awesome. More, please. This lights me up. More, please.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah, I love that. I mean, really, everything that you're telling us is easy. I don't want to say easy, but they can be guided to easy, simple ways for us to just live better lives and spread that better life to others, through generosity, or even just being it. If you're a happier person, people around you are going to be happier too, you know?
And it's simpler than you know. I just encourage people, forget everything we've said, become a boss of your own sleep.
Yep.
Use breath work to improve your sleep. Forget about everything else, because everything else will get sorted out
Right.
once you improve that sleep. Waking up at 2 a.m., hit that button, get yourself back to sleep. This is the kind of joy that I have right now, introducing people to something super powerful. I'm not the powerful one here. I see myself as the person that connects you to the new love of your life.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life, you're going to
Liberating
have
thing,
this
right?
love affair
Yeah.
with these wonderful chemical cocktails that you can generate inside yourself. You can heal yourself. You can make yourself get ready to fight, get ready to sleep. You can perform better. You can live better. There is a whole lot of science behind it, but essentially it makes you feel freaking amazing. And if we can make ourselves feel freaking amazing, there's less likelihood we're going to believe someone when they say, "Hey, you want to feel freaking amazing? You can't feel amazing unless you buy this thing and get that stuff," and rah, rah, rah.
Yep. Exactly. No, great points, Tim. I loved hearing all about this. But I do want to, if it's okay with you, I want to switch gears for a second. I have a little segment that I call Dude Q&A. It's just some rapid fire questions based on your background. So it'd just be quick, easy questions, easy answers. I might ask it, to explain, but hopefully it won't be too bad. So I hope you enjoy it. I know a lot of guests like it, but first question, if you're ready, is worst sleep mistake that most dudes make?
Artificial light. Okay.
Yeah. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. When you said rapid fire, I thought you
Yeah,
might need
no,
like a
no,
one.
no, no. That's good. But when I hear things, I just want to be like, I might ask you, hey, let's go, let's
Okay.
go a little
Okay.
bit deeper.
So artificial light, we are light. Every cell in our body responds to light. Okay. That little blinking light in your room at night. Okay. So you want to be a master of light exposure. Fun fact, when you get the first ray of light over the horizon through your eyeballs, that sets off a chemical cocktail, all involuntary, that gets rid of all the sleep chemicals in your brain. And inside of us, we have hundreds of internal clocks, circadian rhythms. And when that first ray of light comes over the horizon, it synchronizes all those circadian rhythms. Okay. And if you've ever sort of tried to get to sleep at night, there's a part of you still not wanting to sleep. That's because your circadian rhythms are out of whack. Or if there's a regular time at which you wake up at night, that can be a part of you that needs healing and wakes you up because it's not healed properly. Okay. Because the body is cleaned in shifts. It'll do, kidneys, liver, all these different things in shifts. And if you're waking up at a regular time, there's something that's out of whack. All right. So getting natural light on your skin, ideally sunrise, sunset, one of the most powerful things, a couple hours before sleep, have everything as low light as possible. Some people wear those blue sunglasses.
Oh yeah.
Whenever I do a podcast, I always light a candle to just to set my intention to serve, right? But candlelight is one of the best things you can do, to have the light exposure, because if we're looking at screens, that's literally releasing the chemicals to disconnect you from your own body. Your own body can be tired, but these chemicals go, no, we need to be awake because it's light right now.
Gotcha.
We were evolving a lot longer since the industrial age, a lot longer since we had artificial lights. So I'm a firm, the biggest thing you can do is be a master of your light control, and it's got to be naked light, like not even through a window. Okay. You've got to have that naked light on your skin. I don't even wear sunglasses because your retina does need natural light, and our skin, when it experiences first light in the morning, it actually produces this natural sunscreen as well.
Oh wow.
Okay. And so I just want to mention one word here. Healthy light, sunlight, is called azimuth light. Okay. Azimuth light is when your shadow is longer than you are. Really simple. So if your shadow is as long as you or longer, you can get as much of that on your body as you like. Middle of the day is still okay, but you just have to be mindful. Okay.
Yeah,
In
absolutely.
Australia, we have a lot of light, sun, but you will find massive shifts if you can become a master of your light exposure, because
I
this
love
stuff has
and
been happening your whole life. You didn't know it. And so when you make that shift, you're like, whoa, I just got aligned to something powerful.
Yeah, and that's something here where I live. I live in Ohio in the United States, and I'm in Northeast Ohio. We don't get a lot of sunlight, so a lot of us actually have vitamin D deficiencies, because we don't get a lot of sunlight, especially during the winter months, which we're finally coming out of here. But yeah, it is funny. People don't realize that light does make a difference in your life, natural light.
And you can get certain lamps that can mimic sunlight. I've got like red lights, near infrared lights, all that sort of stuff. So it is. And before I go to sleep, I've always got my red light on, so my eyes are experiencing that red light. And when I wake up in the morning, I'll either light a candle. So the first light to go past my retina is natural light, or my red light. Because if you look at your phone as the first thing, that'll send that blue light through your system.
Yeah.
So always have your phone on, the yellow light screen.
Yeah, the nighttime. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Tim. So next question. If you get tired during the day, what's better to do? Have a cup of coffee or take a nap?
Believe it or not, I'm going to give you some fun facts about coffee that's going to triple your benefit of coffee. Okay. Coffee is actually really healthy for you. Got a lot of neural benefits. And this is coming from a guy who owned a coffee shop. What a lot of people don't know is all the goodness of coffee. If you add milk to coffee, the milk proteins block a lot of the benefits. Okay. So the best way to have coffee is to have a black coffee. And if you really want to jack that up, put in some grass-fed butter, grass-fed ghee. You can get this coconut oil called medium chain MCT oil, and you blend that. Put that in the blender and blend it, because then that crosses your blood-brain barrier and feeds your brain. So let me just add that a lot of people are in the habit of waking up and having a coffee. Unfortunately, when you first start becoming conscious, when you wake up in the morning, your body takes about 90 minutes to purge. So think of a purge point on your body, and you're purging all these sleep chemicals, right? Now, if you take a coffee, you effectively block that purge point, okay? And then when the coffee wears out, all those sleep chemicals are still in your system and people need another coffee. So if people want to maximize their coffee, I would say for the first 90 minutes, just hydrate. I always have salt. I've got this little bowl of salt. I just take a pinch of salt, water. I'll hydrate myself. And after an hour or so, I'll have that coffee, because then I've gotten rid of all the sleep and the coffee can go into my brain and function the way it's supposed to function. So to answer your question about sleep or coffee, believe it or not, you could do both. Okay. Because it takes 20 minutes for coffee to get into your system. What some people do is they'll have a shot of coffee, glass of water, sleep for 20 minutes, and then wake up, the coffee's in the system, they're good to go. Now, when it comes to afternoon naps, I'm a firm proponent of them, or even just laying down doing breath work for 20 minutes, because they haven't found a drug that can do for you what an afternoon power nap will do for you. Yeah, especially in men's health. Okay. And again, this costs nothing. It just takes a bit of time. So whenever I had a break at work, I wouldn't eat. I would feed myself breath and sleep, and I would get so much more from my day. But having a little shot of caffeine with some water, 20 minutes later, you wake up, it'll be in your system, good to go. So you can do both. But if I had to choose, it would be a nap. Coffee isn't so much a stimulant as it is a suppressant of fatigue. So there's one thing, to take a Panadol for a broken leg. There's another thing to fix the leg. You saw me sort of sipping away. People think I'm drinking coffee. This is actually ceremonial grade cacao. So where chocolate comes from. And I'll have that blended up with fresh ginger and turmeric, and that becomes my morning energy boost. For me to see the sunrise, I literally have to get up on the roof of my house, and the neighbors might think I'm crazy, but when you connect again to like those millions of dollars that are available, that 50 cents that might be wasted on someone else's opinion gets very small, very quick. So that's my sort of morning routine: cacao, up on the roof, sunrise, light, and whatever happens on the rest of the day is an absolute bonus.
Awesome. So, Tim, what's the first sign that you need more sleep?
If you listen to other people, they will tell you, because you're getting more reactive and you don't know it. So all of us, okay, a good way to see it is all of a sudden everyone else just becomes a complete asshole. Life becomes
Gotcha.
hard. In traffic, everyone's an asshole, right?
I've been there.
Okay. That is a classic sign of fatigue, because you're looking at life from a very adequate point of view. If you're abundant, you could see, yeah, I might get taken from today, but I'm in touch with something so much bigger. But if you're on fatigue levels, everyone seems like an a-hole, and you cannot not dive into certain external substances, food, alcohol, pills. These are classic signs of fatigue. The hormone regulator, also the appetite regulator, is a hormone called ghrelin. And when you don't sleep well, those levels get messed up, and then you just eat a whole lot more than you're supposed to. And you have to understand that the hard fact of this is there's no holding ground. You're either spiraling up, I feel good, I'll do things that make me feel better, and I'll do more good things, right? Or I feel bad, I need to have something that makes me feel more comfortable. Life gets harder, I need more comfort, and you start spiraling down, okay?
Yep.
7 billion people on the planet.
Yeah, the addiction gets you, right? When you go to like drugs or alcohol, that's how it gets you, because you start off with just a little bit, then you need just a little bit more, then just a little bit more, and it just keeps, it just keeps taking you down. But yeah, that's great advice. And so for you, last question, I know this wasn't as rapid fire as we said it would be, but I loved it anyway because it was a great conversation. What is your favorite way to give back?
Here's what I've noticed. If you can genuinely hold space for someone, like not have any expectation, not have any agenda, there's this unspoken energy that just comes out of the person. When someone feels safe, it's like they can drop their guard, they can let their true self out. And when their true self comes out, it's like they automatically know where to go. You're not actually doing anything. I could try and give them the best advice, blah, 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 blah. But if I genuinely connect to myself, get complete within myself, and I can be genuinely sincere with somebody, no agenda, at an unspoken level, I've got no agenda. If you can genuinely hold space, people pick up on that pretty rapidly. And then all of a sudden, this softness comes out, and they just can go, here's exactly what I want. To me, it's not enough to create heaven for yourself. You've got to create heaven for others. And heaven is a place where you feel safe. You can move in a direction effortlessly without any resistance. And it's so wonderful to watch that happen in another human being.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even know the words to describe that, but I know exactly what you're talking about, because, having that space and just having those people around you and not expecting anything, and just having a lot of times we call those friends, even though we do, we do get some folks that, help us out a lot, but we don't expect much from them. And, you just have those good relationships, but that's excellent. And then Tim, we've talked about a lot today, and we've been on for a while, so I want to be cognizant of your time. But you've really dropped a lot of stuff, whether it be from sleep, generosity, how to do some breath work. You even gave us a good example. But one thing that I want to make sure the listeners know is, how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you, Tim?
Sure, Nathan. 3 very easy words: breath work, 1 word, in bed. So if you put that into your phone app store, you can literally turn your bed into a cloud tonight. Okay. Of course, I've got all the socials, but to me, if the world doesn't need any more social junk mail, it needs a connection to your sovereign self. And, we're even giving it away 28 days free. So it's not going to cost you anything for the first 28 days. And, I can't do what you do, but I am super passionate about improving your sleep and then seeing what grows out of that wonderfully nourished soil.
Yeah, I love that, Tim. And if there's one thing you would like our listeners to get from our show that we've had together today, what would your message be to the listeners?
Master your breath. Practice that little simple breath of possibility.
Yep.
I'll put a little link for a little video if you need a little refresher, but master that breath of possibility when you don't need it. So when you do need it, you go to it. Okay. Special Forces soldiers weren't doing anything differently than regular soldiers, but we drilled it to the point where we could bring it out under situations of high duress. And we need to be that way with our breath. Yes. Bring it out. There it is. There it is. There it is. Problem. There it is. Problem. There it is. Because if we don't have that, there it is, access to our breath, that problem will start blocking us, and then something else will block us. And at the end of the day, we don't want to feel blocked. We're built to be open and connected. So, we'll look to something else. So, understand, get that drill happening of you returning to your breath. If anything comes against me, I'm returning to my breath. So yeah, control your breath, control everything, do your repetition in your drills, make it a lifestyle thing. It's not a hack. Lifestyle gets you into problems. Lifestyle gets you out of problems. And I've created a platform, Breathwork in Bed, where you can have that lifestyle easy and effortless. And I'm really looking forward to, seeing what comes out of people's lives, and I might not see it in this lifetime, but I do believe, I have a faith that tells me when we get to the other side, Nathan, whatever, the Spirit, God, will show us our life as we saw it, and then he'll show us life as we didn't see it. So that one action, this one podcast created impacts in people's lives and impacts in other people's lives. So this thing that happened will flourish like a family tree in a direction we can't see with our own eyes. And Nathan, that's what faith is for me, not whether, God exists or not, because he simply does or he doesn't. It's a case of, is my average everyday life creating powerful and positive impacts, on others. I sincerely wish that what we've learned today has served your audience. And I want to thank yourself and all those people listening for being with us for this duration.
Yeah, and Tim, I want to thank you for joining us so much. And so, I will have a guest profile for you on my website, which is justadudepodcast.com. So it'll have your photo there, all your links to your socials, to the app, to, everything that I have for you. So our listeners can have that there. But, as we close out, I just want to make sure, is there anything else that you wanted the listeners to know about before we call it a wrap today?
I'll just restate, get your drills right with your breath. Drill it in a place where you're comfortable. And then when you go to anywhere else, it's just there. It'll be there. It'll be there. It'll be the best friend you'll have for the rest of your life. It'll be the power in your corner. It'll be there when you wake up, when you go to sleep, and especially at 2 a.m. when your head's getting, a little crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm definitely going to try the techniques that you had. I'm definitely going to get the app, because just the quick feeling from those 3 breaths that we did together it blew my mind. I did not believe that it could have that much effect on you that quickly. So definitely for the listeners, go back, listen to that part again. You could do it with us as Tim taught me how to breathe, do some breath work. It's a good way to get started and get out there and check out Breathwork in Bed. But Tim, again, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad that you came here. I think this is going to have such a great impact on our listeners. I know it's going to have a good impact on me, because, I have trouble with sleep anyway. So, anything that I can do to naturally make myself sleep better, I'm going to give it a try, because just like you said, I'm tired of the medications. I'm tired of everybody trying to come at me with, let's put a pharmaceutical. And then, you get one medicine, then they're like, you get a side effect. Oh, well, here's a medicine for that, and I'm just done. I think a lot of us in this world are done looking for more natural ways to take control of our lives, to take control of our sleep. And I just want to thank you again for joining us today, Tim.
My absolute pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. We had breathwork, sleep is a weapon, and a million reasons to give a damn. Try Tim's 3-breath trick tonight and hit me up and let me know how it goes. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, rate us, and tell your boys. Until next time, keep questioning, keep improving, and keep being just a dude or a dudette. I'm Nathan, and I'll see you next time on Just a Dude Podcast.